Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for tuning into the RW. This is your host, Brandon Macy, and I am excited about having none other than Austin Middleton with us today. What's up, man?
What's going on, man?
Thank you so much for agreeing to do this podcast. I had talked to you a while back about being on, and then I hit you up last week, and I was like, hey, man, you ready for the podcast? And you're like, sure. And I was like, what about Monday? And you're like, oh, soon.
Yeah, soon.
We're doing it right away.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about having you on. I wanted to talk about some things today. You know, we talked a little bit last week because I saw you in person. And one of the things that we were talking about is I think there's a common misconception with people who are raised in church, people who have, deep ties and backgrounds in church, that it's like those people never go through anything, right?
Yeah.
You look over at somebody, and I've had people tell me this before. They see me on Sunday, I'm wearing a suit, I'm maybe singing that day, or I'm praying with people in the altar or something. And then I talk to someone and tell them a little bit about things that have happened in my past. And they're like, but wait, like, you're in a suit.
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean? And so I think there's a common misconception that we look at people where they are at that time at face value, and we go, or we're just disconnected with their story,
Yeah.
And I mean, you've got great parents, both of your parents own businesses. Your parents have been successful.
Mm-hmm.
You own a business. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. You and your brother own that together. You guys have been successful in that business. I think that entrepreneurship kind of runs in the family.
Definitely.
But that doesn't mean that you don't go through things, and that you don't face things. And one of the things that, you posted here a while back, and when I watched it, it really touched me because, first of all, my first thoughts were, thank you for being transparent about it. But you talked a little bit about depression and anxiety and things that you had gone through. Tell everybody a little bit about kind of what you posted and what that was about.
Yeah, so I've been dealing with a lot of anxiety and depression for years, as far back as I can remember. At least I think it started mainly in high school. It's probably around when I was about 15 or 16. I started going to therapy, but here recently in the last few years, I started talking about it more, and I told my parents, and I ended up going to a psychiatrist, and she was like, yeah, you are definitely like clinically depressed.
Yeah.
And you have severe anxiety, and so yeah, that's really where that started, and that was pretty much what the video was about.
Yeah. Well, and again, I think one of the things about that is, again, people would look at you and go, well, what are you talking about? Like, you've got things that you need, you got a nice house, good family, great background, and all this kind of stuff. So on the outside, people look at it and go, man, I wish I could be this guy. Or
Yeah.
we do that. We tend to do that as human beings, I think, where we look at people and go, man, look at that person that's famous, and look at this. But we don't realize that there's baggage that comes with every one of those things. Like, I've had people tell me before, like, man, you're so blessed to be a pastor's kid. And I got to be honest with you, a lot of times when I was growing up, I remember times by myself crying and going, God, I just want to be regular. Like, I want to be like my friends that are in church. Like, I want to be like outside of the spotlight or outside of that glass house where everybody's kind of looking into your life. And I think, the more success that your parents have, the more success that is in your family to people, whatever that success looks like, then automatically people think that equals like less of a burden on the person, when in all honesty, it can often mean that you feel more pressure.
Yeah.
Like, maybe you feel pressure like, well, man, will I be as successful as my dad has been? Or, will I be as successful as my mom has been with businesses and things that she's done? It's a lot of pressure,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, I'm obviously very blessed, but I will say that depression has nothing to do with stuff.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with stuff. No matter how much stuff or how little stuff you have, you can face depression. And I think that's a common misconception, is that people think that just because you have things and you have material things and whatever, that's just supposed to make you happy, but it's just not the case.
Yeah. Well, it's obvious. You look at movie stars or sports figures, people that are very successful. There's a basketball player that I'm thinking about right now that had everything, but it's like saw videos and pictures of him living on the street, and it's like, how is that possible?
Yeah.
The guy had everything, but possessions definitely doesn't equal happiness.
Yeah.
And I think with depression in general, if people have ever gone through depression, and I can say there was a time in my life that I went through depression. Not something that I've just openly talked about a whole lot. And I think one of the things is, if you've ever gone through depression, you feel it's almost embarrassing, At least for me it was. It was like, well, I don't want to tell people that, I just wanted to lay in bed and I didn't want to get up and do anything. I just didn't want to face life, or, I just wanted to curl up in a ball and not talk to anybody. I mean, all these things, and disconnect myself from family and not talk to anybody about the things that I was going through, and be basically an introvert, especially when people see me and they're like, you're outgoing. It's like, well, I've had times in my life when I wasn't that way, where I held things in and I kept secrets, and it almost destroyed me,
I think my problem was that it was sort of almost, it kind of goes right in line with my personality, because I am naturally an introvert. So I think that was one of the biggest problems with, my parents recognizing it, and they just didn't think anything, because it was, that's just my personality, is just to be very reserved to myself. But yeah, I was the whole time, I was out in my room or whatever, just in my head, it's tough. People that haven't experienced depression really I think they have a tough time understanding what it's really like. And it's like, when you wake up, getting out of bed is tough. Like, doing anything is so tough, and it's just not fun.
So, like, when you say, getting in your head, explain that to people who maybe have gone through the same thing or maybe haven't. Like what do you mean by that? Just you saying, like, you had doubts, you're having like feelings of inadequacy, you're having feelings of fear, anxiety, like scared of what the day has to hold.
Yeah, it's really everything. My biggest problem was just looking at my future. Like, I was really scared of like what the future had for me, and that was kind of where my anxiety came from. But just being in my head, I don't even know. It's really just like, you're just constantly sad. You're constantly down. You have zero motivation to do anything. You just, like, life to me was just like so just mundane, just so it's just like you're in, like, it's like you're constantly living with a dark cloud of your head. And that's just what it's like. I was going to school at the time when I really hit like a breaking point, is what I talked about in the video, is the night that I remember my biggest, like my ultimate breaking point in front of my parents, was when I broke down at dinner, and I went to my room, and then my dad came out there and was telling me, he said, basically, he was just like, you're not even trying to come out of depression. Like, you're not even trying. And that really hurt. And obviously, now he's very supportive and everything.
Sure.
But
and not saying that he wasn't supportive at that time, right? It's just the frustration of going, I don't know how to pull you out of this.
Yeah.
And so what do I do here?
Yeah. And at the time, especially that night, it was like, at that point, I really just broke, and I was like, I don't think you understand. Like, I want to kill myself every day. Like, right now, I don't want to be living. And I think without, I think without how I was raised and my morals about stuff like that is, I don't know what would have happened, but I know that day I really broke, and that was that. That was the day that I broke. And I was telling my dad, it's like living with a dark cloud. Like I can't just wake up and just see sunshine. Like I really see my life as like I have no hope. I have no future. I have nothing. Like I'm gonna wake up. I'm gonna get through school. I'm gonna work a job that I hate, and then I'm just gonna be done with life, and that's it. Like I had no like desire to keep going.
Well, and again, I think the hard thing at times is, again, you're looking at your life going, well, if this is all there is to it, then why keep doing it?
Definitely.
Right? If it's just the same old thing every day. And, for me, the time that I really went through depression was when I was going through my divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember if I told this on my personal podcast that I did with just me, where I told some of my story or not. But man, I've always been a very positive, upbeat person. Usually if I go through something, it's like, I'll get through this. That's kind of that's me.
Yeah.
But for the first time in my life, I felt like my whole world was torn down. I felt like everything that I knew was changed. And I remember this one particular day, which is kind of my breaking point, was, man, I was crying so hard, and I just felt this literal pain, man, in my chest. Like I mean, it was physical. Like it wasn't just an emotional thing or a mental thing.
Yeah.
Like I literally felt physical pain at that moment. And I had or still have a Glock. And, again, I'm just crying, I'm emotional wreck kind of. And I just remember sitting there holding that gun, and I don't think my thought process was, maybe everything is better if I'm just not here.
Yeah.
Right. Like I won't hurt like this because I don't want to continue to hurt like this.
Mm-hmm.
I won't hurt people that I've hurt.
Yeah.
Right. And so if I'm just taken out of the equation, like maybe everything would be better.
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting there thinking that, and I'm looking at my gun, and I'm thinking that over and over, and I'm crying. And for whatever reason, it was like, that's not going to solve anything, And I end up putting it up, and later I'm kind of come out of that emotional state, and I guess the rest is kind of history. I mean, obviously I didn't act on that, but that feeling of despair, that feeling of complete helplessness, right, and hopelessness, is hard to explain until you've been there.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people go through that feeling, but first of all, they don't want to express it because it's like, well, I don't want to tell people that I've been that low.
Yeah.
But to me, man, it said a lot for you to come out and talk about that. And, I've obviously seen where your life is now, and you're in a much better place right now. And you're doing things that are great, in my opinion, right now, making forward progress in things in your life right now. And I think sometimes too, Austin, we have these expectations for ourselves that they're not manageable. I mean, we set this super high expectation, like, sometimes maybe we look, because for me, I know I looked at my dad and I'm like, I'll never be that guy. That was my thoughts. I don't know if you've ever felt that way or not, but I thought that. I'm like, you look up to your parents sometimes and go, man, they're just so good, or they've just done so many things. And I was like, I'll never be able to be that guy. But I realized that there was still a purpose for me.
Yeah.
I was never supposed to be my dad.
Yeah.
That's not, I'm supposed to be me. And I think the quicker we get to that place where we realize that God has something for you individually,
Yeah.
God's not looking at you going, man, I wish you would open up a fajita place. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's not for you, you know?
Yeah.
I don't think God was looking at me going, man, I wish that you would follow the same footsteps that your dad followed. I think God was looking going, I've got something completely different for you, but lean into that. Lean into who you are,
Mm-hmm.
and then figure that out along the way, you know?
Yeah.
So another one of the things that I know me and you talked about, and I did talk about this in my podcast, and I do think that this plays into it as well, is, and I've said this to a lot of people, but we are what we eat. That's the saying, right? Like, we are what we eat. So a lot of appetites that I've had in my life have not been good for my well-being either, you know? And me and you talked about that. One of those things was music for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've had to watch, like, what things I've taken in
Mm-hmm.
to myself, because I would find myself in a certain mindset because of maybe the music I was listening to at the time,
Yeah.
you know? And I know we both talked about that.
Yeah.
We're both hip hop fans, right? Which maybe you look at me and be like, you guys are the two whitest guys ever. but that's what I that's what I grew up on.
Yeah.
Like, I really did. And so I know that that's been something that we've talked about too, right? It's just kind of like your appetites that you take in,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I obviously, along with my depression, I've dealt with some addiction issues.
Yeah.
And they really went hand in hand.
Sure.
And when I finally came out about that and talked about my issues, smoking weed and being ultra addicted, that was sort of like when I really started to make progress, was when I shined a light on that. And I was like, I came out, I was like, hey, I need help, you know, like this is a problem. And yeah, that was, I think that really went hand in hand with my depression. It was just like I was just numbing myself, you know.
Yeah. Well, misconception too is that, you know, that marijuana, weed is not addicting, right?
Yeah.
And that's definitely not true. You know, that's something you and I talked about too. I mean, you know, that's something that I fought for a long time in my life. And when I would go through things in my life, and especially when I was younger, you know, I had a lot of other drugs and stuff that I did. Obviously I drank. I mean, I smoked cigarettes for a long time. Which all that stuff, like, even now when I think about it and think back to those things, it's hard for me to even believe that, like, a lot of the things that I did back then that I even did.
Yeah.
Because there's been, you know, quite a bit of time there. But it was something that I did have a hard time with for a long time. And, you know, you said this a while ago. You said when you shine the light on that, I mean, the Bible says that the truth will set you free.
Yeah.
So I think one of the problems is we lie to ourselves about things that we're going through. We lie to those around us, right?
Yeah.
Like our families. We're hiding things from our families. We're hiding things from those that are close to us and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, because you shine the light on it, because you've come out and said, this is something that I had an issue with and I faced it for a long time, that you're able to get past it.
Yeah. And Pastor, I mean, this was one thing I was kind of worried whether or not I should talk about it, even on this podcast or to anyone. But, you know, because basically my biggest fear was being judged and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I know pastors said this many times, is the church is supposed to be a hospital. And, you know, you don't wait till you're better to go to the hospital. You go when you're sick. Right. And so that's just kind of where I was at. I was just like, well, I have to tell people, I have to get help, and, you know, I have to step out if I really want to get better. So,
well, and the thing is too, you're right. The church is supposed to be the hospital, and, you know, a lot of times we're scared of people's judgment, right? We're scared of, and I mean, this is what you just said. We're scared of if we come out and say, oh, I've had a hard time smoking weed, that people are automatically going to look at you and go, what? I mean, that guy, he's dresses nice, is all this stuff. I mean, you and I have both known a lot of people. I think there's a misconception too that if somebody does that, they can't be successful or they can't do other things. I mean, marijuana is a widespread thing. This is not something that is in the closet anymore. It's easy to get. It's not hard. You get pulled over in Houston, you're not even going to jail for it. So there's a lot of things that have changed in the last, several years when it comes to that, where it's not as taboo as it used to be or that sort of thing. And it's something that, I'm having to decide, when am I going to talk to my kids about this?
Yeah.
Because they're going to be faced with somebody going, yeah, I smoke weed. And, and now, you've got, and this is something we were talking about too. And parents, let me tell you this, it is our job as parents to have discussions with our kids too. For one thing, we're not where we used to be, where you have to roll a joint to smoke weed anymore and worry about the smell of it and all that kind of stuff. Now you've got vape pens, you've got all this stuff where, and you told me this, you were smoking in your room.
Yeah.
Nobody knew you were smoking that in your room because there's no scent to it.
Yeah.
Nobody knows it. You can stick it in your pocket. Nobody knows it's there. It's all liquid. I mean, all this stuff.
I mean, so I started when I was about 16. I'm 22 now, and for years, I mean, I was doing it literally from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to bed. Yeah. I was high the entire day, every single day, and nobody had any idea. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest reason that I say marijuana is the most deceptive drug, is because it's so easy. You can hide it. You can be high. No one will know. You can do it throughout the day, and no one knows anything. It has no real immediate physical. There's no physical you don't have. There's nothing that shows physically.
Right. Well, I mean, look, Visine, right? Clear eyes, whatever. Yeah. I mean, there are some things, but you pop in a breath mint, you put it, you learn the tricks, right?
Yeah.
You learn the tricks and things to do, and that's the same thing with kids, is they're doing these things, and when you've been smoking for that long, it would almost probably be easier to tell when you weren't high, what's wrong with Austin?
Definitely.
And it's like, oh well, you were probably going, well, it's because I'm not high. You're so used to seeing me that way. And so I think that's something too, is that obviously once you do that for a long time, being around people, all this kind of stuff. Now I'll say this, there have been many times that I've seen people and I'm like, oh, they're high.
Yeah.
Because I know, because I did it for so long, had friends that did it, was around people that did it. So, I mean, not too long ago, I just saw somebody in a church environment, and I was like, that person's on coke.
Yeah.
And this was in a church environment.
Right.
And I knew it right away, but it's because I had that in my background that I knew, hey, I've seen it enough times. I know the signs. I know that kind of stuff. So, but from a standpoint of maybe like your parents, my parents, that haven't been around that, it just be like, oh, well, he's just quiet, or he's just to himself, or, he's just wrapped up in whatever he's doing at the moment.
Yeah. And even when I was trying to come off it, when I was trying on my own, I would have it would be a couple days really, but I would try on my own to be like, okay, I can not today. I'm going to do it. I'm not addicted. I can shake this on my own. And, the withdrawals aren't something with alcohol, you can get very sick and stuff like that.
Right.
But with weed, you don't really get that sick. I mean, you
maybe
get headaches.
Mood swings or something.
But that's the problem, is you get super irritated. You get mild headaches, stuff like that. But it's nothing that anyone, you can easily hide it.
Right.
And it's just that was really the I don't know, it was the toughest thing for me, was that because I'm an introvert, so I love to hide things. I'm to myself and everything. So that's what made it the perfect storm.
Well, and to me, we're naive if we don't think that there's other people like you that are facing this. I'm talking about adults. I'm talking about other young people. Just because you grow up in church, just because you're around church, does not make you does not set you apart from being able to be tempted by these things, be around these things, or fall prey to these things. Again, I think that sometimes, we look at young people and go, oh, well, they're a good church kid, or they're this. It doesn't mean that you're not those things, first of all, but in the world that we live in, you're inundated by that. I mean, let's be honest. There's cops that do. I know this is going to be maybe information to you guys or some of you, but there are cops that do drugs. There's teachers that do drugs. There's people, obviously we see it in government and places like that all the time with stories that come out. And I think the generation that's older than us, and I'm even a generation older than you, but are sometimes shocked by those things. Like, I can't believe that. But I know that there's a lot of people that are doing that are just everyday life that you may look at and go, man, that's a successful businessman. But come to find out, they have a heroin problem. And it's like, huh? Because they've done it for so long that they're good at hiding it and good at being functioning alcoholics or functioning drug addicts. And that stuff's definitely out there. What would you tell a parent? If you could tell a parent something like, what would you tell them to try to help their kids from that? I mean, from your perspective, like, what do you think your parents could have maybe done that would have helped in your situation?
I mean, for me personally, I think my parents did actually a pretty good job.
Yeah.
All things considered.
Sure.
But, well, first of all, I think if I would have been more connected with my family and just things like that, I probably would have not sought out something to fill those voids in me. But if your kid comes to you and is asking for help, I would say the first thing is don't get angry with them. Don't blame them. Because they're crying out for help, and this is your chance to show them how much you love them and how much you want to help them. Because I mean, the whole reason that I didn't want to come out was because I was scared that I was going to be ridiculed. And so if I come out,
get in trouble, right?
Yeah, but if I come out and then I'm in trouble, then it's like, well, see, I shouldn't have did that. And same thing with depression is like, I was just scared. I would just be like, well, why are you depressed? I mean, you have everything, know? But it's like,
or maybe like disappointment from your parents, right? Them being disappointed in you.
Yeah. And luckily they didn't really do anything like that, but a lot of people, or like that one moment where my dad sort of blamed me in a way where he was like, well, you're not even trying to come out of depression. That's what I was scared of, is that like, if I come out and say, I'm depressed, don't say stuff like that where you're just like, well, you're not trying to come out of depression. You don't even do this or you don't do that. It's like, okay, well, because I'm depressed, I can't do those things. It's like I have, it takes help and, Well,
and I think from a parent standpoint, I mean, I've got 3 kids, and I mean, again, that's one of the reasons why I'm asking you, because it's like, if this is, God forbid, but if this is ever something that I have to deal with personally, I want to be able to deal with it in the right way and try to be a help. And I try to tell my kids now, like, hey, you can talk to me about anything. I try to, if my kids tell me the truth about something, or they come to me and say, hey, Dad, I broke the lamp. Yeah. Like, I try to be the person that's not, what? Blow up on them. And then they're like, the next time they're not going to tell me because they're scared I'm going to blow up on them. And it's such a fine line as a parent, because you're like, okay, but, I've got to let my kids know that there's consequences for mistakes and things that they do. But at the same time, I want to be the person that they feel like they can come to and confide in me. And so, there's also frustration that I know that comes as a parent. I mean, there's times that I get frustrated with my kids And then I've got to go back to them and go, hey guys, I'm sorry. I had told you 20 times to stop doing that, and you didn't do it, but I shouldn't have gotten angry.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have gotten frustrated. So there's things that as a parent, you face too. And then there's things that as a parent that you're going through that sometimes your kids don't know about. I'm facing things in my life as an adult, and I think a lot of times kids look at their parents and go, oh, they don't go through anything.
Yeah.
Well, as a parent, I can tell you that's not true. There's many days that still disappointments come or things that I face come in my life, and I have to go, I have to deal with those things. And let me say this, one of the things about drugs and about addictions in general is I've told my mom this one time. I said, and honestly, I had to go to AA for a while in my life, and I was mandated by the state to go. And one of the things that they talked about were, they would always introduce themselves, say, hey, my name's so-and-so, and I'm an alcoholic. And I was like, well, they've been clean for 20 years. Why are they still saying they're an alcoholic? But what I quickly realized is the reason they did that is because they were admitting that at any time they could go right back to that. At any moment, they could go right back to that. And I told my mom one time, I said, look, it's like this. It's like a door that you can shut, but you can never lock it.
Yeah.
Right? So as soon as something disappointing happens in your life, what's the first thing that you think about? Man, if I could just smoke right now, I'd feel better. It's like as soon as a disappointment comes, as soon as you have this stressful day, as soon as there's anxiety there, you're like, ooh, but I could medicate it with this. Yeah. And I think the challenge is going, but when that comes, then, the Bible says resist the devil and he will flee. So that means every time. It could happen 100 times. It could happen 10,000 times. It could happen 100,000 times. But I can tell you, even after all these years of being clean, all these years of me doing these things, there are still times, now it's not as frequent, but there's still times that something will happen and I'll have a thought and I'm like, where did that come from? Like, get out of here or whatever. But that's going to happen. Yeah. And I'm sure you've had that too, right? Yeah. You have a bad day and it's like, oh man, if I could just, and then you're like, wait, I can't, I'm not doing that, Yeah, definitely. So I think it's important for people to know that you have now created this battle for yourself. The reason that we try to tell kids, hey, don't try that, don't do that, is because we're going, don't create that battle for yourself down the road. Yeah. Because as soon as it was the same thing in the garden, right? So much of what we go through, I parallel to Adam and Eve, because as soon as they realized that they were naked, it's like all of a sudden there was this realization that they ate the fruit and then they start seeing these things like, oops, we're not clothed. It was like there was this realization because they brought this on themselves, right? So once they took a bite of the apple, once they took that in, then they created these battles for themselves after that, And I think that could be tough as a Christian. It's like my mom told me one time, she said, I don't understand why you would want to drink or do drugs. And I said, you know why you don't understand? Because you've never done it. Yeah. Because my mom hadn't. I made a joke that my mom thought was hilarious, but we were sitting there with my family one time and I said, the worst thing that mom ever did was one time when she was in school, she spelled Jesus with a lowercase j. Yeah,
that's how I feel about my mom. I think she's never done anything.
Yeah, and everybody laughed about it, but it was true. My mom was like, I've never done any of those things. But because she had never done them, she never had the temptation of doing it. Yeah. It's like once you open yourself up to that, now you've created this open area where temptation can drop in. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to talk about is a lot of people don't know that you and your brother Colton, who is also super talkative, right? Which is so funny. He wrote me here a while back. We were talking about fishing, and man, he was blowing me up. And I was like, I've never talked this much to Colton in my whole life. Yeah. And it's because we were talking about fishing. He was all pumped about it. Yeah. I know he's big time into fishing. But you and your brother started a company called MIDI Beats, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is a play off your last name, Middleton, right? Yeah. So how did that all come about?
I don't know.
I mean, y'all have a love for music, obviously.
Yeah.
Music's in your family. Your dad plays. And
I think Colton just saw a video on YouTube, and then he ended up buying a program to make beats.
yeah.
And then I just walked in his room one day, and he was just like messing with stuff. And I was like, oh, this is cool. And then we just, that's how it happened. I mean, it wasn't really like it was pretty random, but.
So the funniest thing was I let my boys hear some of your beats like one time, you know? And so they were like, wait, MIDI Beats goes to Royalwood? And I was like, yeah. And so they were like, can we meet them? And I was like, yeah, sure. So you remember in the service, I brought them up and I was like, hey, my boys wanted to meet you in Colton because they were so pumped about it. But I mean, you guys have done really well with that, right?
Yeah.
Are y'all still doing it quite a bit? I mean, still actively?
I mean, that's what I'm doing right now.
So I know D.A. Davies, right?
Yeah.
That's what everybody's calling him now, right? Davies.
Yeah.
I know he's used you guys.
Yeah.
I know y'all have had some other artists use you guys beats and stuff like that. I mean, that's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah. We just a few weeks ago got our first paycheck from a major label.
Really?
Yeah, we got a paycheck from Sony, so that was pretty cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. So, I mean, I know obviously your dad's kind of helped you from the business standpoint of things, right? But like, there's a lot of business stuff to take place.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
But I mean, what do you see you guys doing this long term? I mean, it's obviously something y'all enjoy and you're good at it.
Yeah, I mean that's what I would like to do with my life. So hopefully it works out that way. I mean.
Yeah, so I had to explain to my parents like what y'all did. So I'm like, okay, look, you know, when people do songs, you know, sing songs, rap, hip hop, whatever it is, they often use samples. And so I'm like, basically what they do is they create samples and beats that people can use and rap over or sing over or whatever. And so it was funny because I was having to kind of explain to them like what you guys actually did.
Yeah.
But no, it's really cool that you guys do that. And I mean, you've had all kinds of artists use you guys stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Very cool.
Yeah.
So does your dad get involved in that? Now, I think he showed you guys like, because some of your stuff has keys and stuff like that.
Yeah, he gave us a few music theory lessons.
Yeah, like a little crash course.
Yeah. But Colton has been playing guitar, and he's been learning music theory.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, so
see, that's something that we didn't know, so we're finding out new stuff.
He's the secret weapon. He's the real one behind the scenes doing everything.
Okay.
That's the kid.
So we'll have to get Colton on here sometime, and maybe we can get him to perform something, because you know what, I think I even mentioned this to you, but I was like, what would be cool is to like create a sample beat live, like on the podcast.
Yeah,
like that would be cool, and show that process. So I don't think a lot of people know how to do that. And of course, I just happen to be like a nerd with that. Like I love that kind of stuff. You know, when I was growing up, you didn't have like all the stuff to create beats. So like we beatboxed, right? That was like the way that you created beats, was like in the boys' bathroom somewhere, like, you know, it's doing something like that. But it's crazy to see how technology is taken out from there.
It's crazy.
Well, man, I want to thank you for coming on. To me, this is so beneficial to people because, like I said, I think there's a misconception that people look at people and go, oh, well, they're Christians, and oh, they come from a great background. But to see that all on the inside, we're just ordinary people that are facing, you know, crazy things, and we never know what someone's going through. You know, I think it's easy to look across the church at somebody or meet somebody in church and just go, hey, that's a nice young man, and not realize, or nice young lady or whatever, and not realize that people are facing things, man. They're going through things. They're facing depression. Life comes at you. You know, you deal with our own feelings and insecurities and stuff. And I think it's beneficial for people to see you dealing with it, stepping past it,
Yeah.
and then willing to be transparent about it.
Yeah, what I've realized too is that, I mean, obviously I believe God can deliver us, snap a finger, but I've realized that He's wanted me. I mean, obviously I made the decisions to do all the things that I've done, but
Right.
I think the great thing is that He's used this and He's allowed me to go through these things so that I can learn, because at the end of the day, if He snaps His fingers and I'm delivered, well, then I don't really learn anything.
Right.
I'm just like, well,
Right.
I made a mistake and now I'm better, so whatever. But I think He's used this. He's allowed me to go through these things, and He's allowed me to learn and grow. And I think that's where the growth comes from, is Him really leading me through it, sticking by my side through all the ups and downs, and, just showing me the way and helping me learn and grow so that I can actually grow instead of just it being too easy.
Absolutely. Well, and again, when you go through things, you learn lessons in life. You're going to be able to talk to people that otherwise they would look at you and go, what are you going to tell me about my life?
Yeah.
And you can go, well, wait a second. You don't know where I've been. You don't know what I've been through. And it's going to open up a whole sect of people that you can talk to, and you can go, no, I've been where you are.
Yeah.
I've gone through the things that you've gone through, and I can tell you that you can overcome it.
Definitely.
It's
Definitely.
what the Bible says, that we overcome by the word of our testimony.
Yeah.
So to be able to tell somebody, hey, I was depressed just like you. Hey, I had anxiety. Hey, I had addictions that I had to fight through, but God brought me out of it. That's the testimony.
Yeah, that is it.
Hey, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Remember, we drop a new podcast every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Check us out on Instagram at @TheRWPodcast_, Facebook at @TheRWPodcast. Check us out on YouTube under the Royalwood Church channel. You can check us out on Roku TV, iTunes TV. We're on Spotify. We're everywhere. So make sure you like and share this with somebody if you think it'll be a benefit. Thank you, Austin Middleton, for being on. We'll see you guys next week. Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode. Remember, every Tuesday we're coming to you with a brand new episode. You can watch that on YouTube under the Royalwood page. You can see that on the Roku TV app, on the Apple TV app. You can follow us on Instagram at @TheRWPodcast_, on Facebook, and make sure you hit that subscribe button below. Also, turn on your notifications. That way, you'll know when we're dropping a new episode, and you'll make sure not to miss it. Thanks again, and see you next week.